Good morning. My name is Steve Weber, and I am the host of the American Gumption Morning Show. Welcome to the last week of October. Today is October 26th, Monday, and this is show number 57. And so, can you believe it? October coming to the end, and then we only have November and December left in the month. So the year of COVID is flying right by, coming to an end, not a minute too soon for many people. All righty, so I have a great show. I have a great week lined up for us. But today, let's just focus on today for this moment and let you know that I have a husband and wife, Steve and Radiance Tyler are going to be my guest, and they are co-creators in the music business, and so we'll get into their story in about 15 minutes from now. They are building a recording studio, and they're going to share with us their vision and dream and some pictures of the construction as it's getting near to being ready to open up. So anyway, that's coming up just in a few minutes. The monologue is going to be building things in honor of the project that they have going, but also building things has been a big part of my life. So I'll talk about that, share some of that. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about what's coming up this week. Again, the last week of October, and now tomorrow I do not have a guest scheduled, although I know people that could jump in there. So I don't know whether I'll do an interview show or if I'll just do a monologue. I have not done a monologue for at least 3, maybe 4 weeks. I meant to look up exactly the last day that I just did that. Early on, before I had my routine of getting the guest filled up, I had done those at least, once a week where I did a monologue only session. But anyway, I might do that, and that actually might be fun to do. So I'm not worried if a guest does not fill in. I've got an idea for a nice, like a little bit of a longer monologue, and we'll go ahead and do that tomorrow. Now, Wednesday, Tamara Fleming is going to join us, and Tamara's business is Meaning of Space, meaningofspace.com. Tamara will be, talking about how your space and your place, really affects you. And so her transformation, teaching and leading is with the idea that, take our physical surroundings and let that work towards helping you create the future that you want. And specifically, we'll be using the example of our virtual backgrounds. We're all on Zoom these days. We're all having live meetings. What does the backdrop, what does the background, what message is that sending to the people you are talking to, and what is it sending to yourself, more importantly? So anyway, that's going to be a great session. And Tamara has helped me redesign. I kind of threw up what I threw up on the shelves a couple months ago. And then, 2 weeks ago, she said, "Hey, do you want some coaching?" And I'm like, I'm not sure. And so she redesigned my backdrop. We'll talk about that on Wednesday. Thursday is Reverend Wynn Henderson, MD, and he's going to talk about the spiritual cure for addiction or addictions. He's identified 25 different types of addictions that people have in their lives, and they all kind of have a common thread, common theme. So he's going to come join us, and that'll be a fun conversation. We all have something that we indulge in a little too much. So guilty as charged. All righty. And then Friday, Brian Gregory, our guest on Friday last week, couple days ago, he's going to come back and join us, and we're going to do a deep dive into the ball. And so he a test that you can take in terms of who your ideal client is, and you have to know who your ideal client is, and you have to know what your product is, and then he ends up identifying what is the emotional triggers to connect with that product. He gives you a 150-page or so report with all kinds of ideas on how to, promote your business, how to talk about your business, how to connect with your particular audience, and then, connect people who want what you have with what you have. And so it's a win-win for everybody. So that's going to be a deep dive on Friday. So we'll welcome him back. All righty. Now, today's monologue, let's do the, whoops, I had I had the Radiance and Steve Tyler banner up there at the beginning of it. And I see they've joined us in the green room. So they're getting ready back there. Let the American Gumption Morning Elves come and take care of you guys for a few minutes and treat you nice, get a little drink, refreshment, maybe a snack, and then we'll bring you on live in about 10 minutes. All righty. So anyway, the monologue, building things. Yes, in honor of our guest, I decided that I would do today's monologue on building things. Now, it all starts when we're children. And my father was a builder. He was a guy who was constantly making things. He knew how to use tools and how to fabricate things. He was actually trained as a coppersmith, and that kind of shifted into metal fabrication. And so he worked for years and years and years in a trade, in the metal trade, welding and cutting big metal pieces and putting them together and making storage tanks and vessels and all kinds of things for chemical companies and production places and conveyors and all kinds of anything out of metal. He worked with that all his life. And so he knew how to take a blueprint and read it. Now, I grew up in that environment. Dad built an addition to the house when I was, 5 or 6 years old. And then a garage before that when I was even younger, and then a vacation cabin up in the Pocono Mountains. And so, I was always exposed to building and construction, and I grew up in an environment where my father, he could build anything. He could whether it was out of wood or metal or he just knew how to make things happen. And sometimes there was a formal blueprint and design, and other times it was just sort of he scribbled on a piece of paper and made some notes and ended up getting materials and putting them together. So I grew up in an environment watching a man just put things together, get materials, get the tools out, start cutting and sawing and nailing. And next thing you know, something was completed and finished. So in high school, I ended up going and working with my father during the summers. That happened between, a couple of years. And so that was like my first real work experience. And so what I learned, and then I ended up going and working with him for 4 years. So what I learned during that time is that, you started out with a blueprint, there was a design, and then from there you bought a bunch of materials. And so in this case, it was in the metal fabrication business. And so there was these blueprints for these projects that would come out that would be, a couple inches thick, were full of different, detailed drawings. And so, and then materials, trucks would come in and there'd be all kinds of raw materials, and you'd stack the raw materials in a certain place. And then eventually you'd start pulling those materials out and cutting them and making it into whatever it is that you are making it into. And, maybe these projects were big projects. They would take months to complete. And so I saw that, you had a design beginning phase, and then you had an actual construction phase, and then you ended up having a completed phase. And in this case, it went out the door. But I also saw my father build the vacation cabin and do these things. So I grew up in that environment. And then I ended up I developed a love for tools. I collected all kinds of tools. I've talked about getting rid of the tools last year because they were just sitting around not getting used. But I loved them. And I had this vision and dream of like a big wood shop someday and a metal shop. So I had all the tools. But then after I was in Montana for the 10 years, I realized that was no longer my dream to actually do the work. I just liked, I liked visualizing things and creating things. All right. So now, you kind of fast forward to the last, 10 years, maybe a little longer, last 20 years. And my building, I'm still kind of a builder. I have a builder mindset. We'll certainly say that, in the sense that, when I started being Forrest Gump for the Baba Gump Shrimp Company, I had to basically build my act. And so I had to come up with, first you had to, design, the costume that you're going to wear and then what you're going to say, and then actually going about doing it, interacting with people, and, learning what types of things worked and what types of things didn't work. And as that came to an end about 10 years ago, and now I'm in Montana, I developed a motivational speaking business. And so I developed a message based on the life lessons from the movie Forrest Gump and would talk about them. Well, that was really in the same sense of building, designing. Well, what was it I was going to talk about? What's the beginning of the presentation? What's the middle? What are the stories that fit in the middle? What's the conclusion? What's the whole summary point of it? And so it was like a bunch of little building blocks of all these different pieces that went along. And then you start into social media and you start, having to do graphic design and messaging again and sending, putting up things on a regular basis and promoting your business. And it's really kind of that same mindset where you're building. You have all these little pieces, all these little sections, and then you end up with a whole bunch of tools that you have to use in order to to create graphics, in order to do the writing, and then in order to share it with the different, there's all these tools that you need to learn. And so I've always thought of, okay, I'm still building things. I'm using tools, but they're digital tools. They're not the same kind of, there's not construction materials per se, but there's ideas, there's concepts, and you're building those concepts and sharing those as we evolve into a different level. We don't necessarily need a whole lot more things in our life. We don't need bigger places to live and bigger storage places. Sometimes we do. We need our own special recording studio out in the woods behind the house so that we can go out there and bring in artists and let them create music. But once that is built, then the building is of the music and the artistry and that sort of thing. So anyway, that's my monologue on building things. I think I'm fascinated by building things. I've always loved building things, and it's just it's a never-ending cycle with you build something, and then once that's built, the love and the joy is in the building, not necessarily in having of course we enjoy the finished product. But if we're not having a lot of fun building it, then it's not built with love, and it doesn't have as much meaning. So that's my building monologue today. Alrighty, I see our guests are excited to be joining us. They're looks like they're ready to go. Can I add them to the stream? Yes, I can. They give me the thumbs up. Hello, Radiance and Steve. Welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. How are you guys this morning?
Good morning.
Good morning. Doing very well. How are you, Steve?
Doing great. Thank you for both joining us. Steve, this is the first time you and I are meeting. Radiance and I, we go back to show number 2, and today is show 57.
Wow.
And Radiance was my very first guest on the American Gumption Show way back on August 4th. So almost 3 months ago. So thank you. Welcome back.
Yeah.
I'm grateful to be here.
And I feel like this should be a party now.
Well, let's make it a party. Yeah, let's have fun with this. So I created a little bit of a intro for the two of you, and I filled in a couple of things that I'm not 100% sure of, so I'll let you correct me when we're all done. And then we have the first time guest welcoming theme. Now, I'm going to make an exception because I played the first time guest theme, Radiance, when you came on, but since Stephen is with us today, we're gonna make it a special day. So let me read this little intro, and then we'll play the theme, and then we'll get you both, and we'll just talk about the project you have going. How's that sound?
Yeah.
Alrighty. So Radiance and Steve Tyler have been married for a couple of decades. Somehow they met when Radiance was touring the world as a singer in a rock and roll band, living as a touring musician lifestyle as Mimi Burns. I guess that's who you originally were. And a light bulb went off in Radiance's head, and she realized that long-term, this lifestyle was unsustainable and not super healthy. So she created a list of questions that any would-be suitor would need to answer. Well, apparently, Steve stepped up to the plate, completed the questionnaire, submitted his application, and was ultimately selected. I mean, what was it, like a monster.com application? No, Monster wasn't built back then. So you can tell anyway, the rest is history. It's been happily ever after since then. Today, they live in Indiana and are completing a dream they've been cultivating for many years. They are building a world-class recording studio for musicians and recording artists to come and create in that space. Steve's interest and expertise start with the technical and production side of the music business, while Radiance's interest and skills come more from the human being, the heart, the mind. So together they support artists in all the other things required to be successful, such as branding, marketing, personal coaching, and of course the actual recording part. They operate two businesses that have a lot of crossover under the brands Silver Birch Entertainment. Oh, now I can put your banner back there. See, I needed better training for my my StreamYard. There it is, silverbirchentertainment.com and lighthouseeffects.com. So Radiance and Steve Tyler, welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. My goodness, we've got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, you make it sound like a wild journey.
I think it has been a wild journey. Anyway, before we go any further, let's play the one-time welcoming theme, although it's actually the second time for Radiance.
I think that's effectively known as the pee break.
How many times do you appear on shows when a marching band welcomes you into it?
I really love that about you. Thank you so much.
I feel welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, good.
And your welcoming story was so good. A bit exaggerated on my end anyway, but I'm not going to change it at all because I love that story and we're going to go with that.
So, but it is true that you're out on the road, you're touring, you're meeting all kinds of, you're living kind of like the rock and roll lifestyle of traveling around, meeting different people, you're going on dates, and you at some point you realize that, wait a minute, I have to have a better plan to actually meet somebody who would be a good partner for me. Just tell us a little bit about that, Radiance, as far as how it all came about, but leave it at that magical, mystical part too. Don't take that part away.
I was playing out, and it was actually after Stephen and I met that we began to tour together. But I knew that that's really where my heart was finding a partner that I could explore a much bigger life with. So that's why we teamed up. Yeah. And we'll go with that, right?
Sounds good.
All right.
So what was your role when you were touring together? Steve, what were you doing? I know Mimi was out front singing, but what were you doing?
Well, she made me stand next to her and sing as well. I play the guitar, we write music together, so it was sort of, we were hand in hand going about, playing our shows, and it was sort of this realization that if you're having dinner at 2 a.m. and you sleep through till early afternoon, and then you're not quite sure where you are, and somehow you get a little exercise maybe before you go on to somewhere else to play somewhere, that it's that part of the glamorous rock star life, for a small period of time that makes you realize there's a challenge to make everything work such that you have a glow and a spirit about you so that you can radiate.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. And I also recognized, the two of us out on the road and working in the music industry for an extensive period of time, how often we saw really hugely dysfunctional relationships, and how often we kind of traveled that journey together in order to recognize, wow, there might be another way to do life in this arena, in this part of the entertainment industry. So the musicians that we met, the producers, the engineers, across the board, the people who didn't have resources to really move away from isolation and into this place of community. So we began dreaming the dream. Well, I can speak for myself. I began dreaming the dream long ago on what resources can we bring and can we bring into our own lives in order to create more sustainability and a more vibrant life for humans, so that they can move away from toxic environments and move into nourishing environments.
Yeah. So your dream that is actually coming to fruition now in terms of the recording studio and the place that the space and the place that people can come and record. I mean, it's really just like coming together, but this dream is, gosh, is it safe to say it's been like a 20-year dream or even longer than that?
Probably a bit longer than that.
Yeah, I would imagine that as well. My parents had a campground when I was growing up. And so from the age of 4, I knew I was going to do like this life. And really, I'd say that that's probably why we're together, was to be able to dream this on a much larger scale so that this could be available to shift the entertainment industry.
So obviously, if it started that 20 years ago or more, there's been a few things that have happened over the years in order for you to get ready for this to happen. I mean, it's not like it's not like you're day in and day out, like that. You're day in and day out living with the dream, but there's also a day in and day out reality of life that kind of had to take place all this time. So just tell us a little tiny bit about what was that transition like for you? And Steve, you don't sound like you were born in Indiana.
I've been practicing my accent, but I don't think I can get away with it just yet. I'll have to keep working on it. Yeah, I'm from England.
But yeah. Indiana is where you came from, Radiance. Is that correct?
No, Chicago, and then Wisconsin, and then California is where we met. So I lived in California for many years, and then we've been here 18 years now in Indiana.
Great. So I've got some pictures to show in just a couple of minutes of what's actually happening on the property. But you ended up, I guess you had to figure out, if you have this dream and you want to build a recording studio somewhere, you need a place to build it. Tell me about how that came about. How did you find the place that you're at?
We were looking for property where we could build a studio. We just needed some space. We decided this is what we were going to do. And we did some sort of searching on the web. And there was this piece of land that had been available for more than a year. And it turned out to be just tucked away behind and in between several other pieces of property. And it was just outside the city limits. And we needed to sort of build this long driveway to be able to get to it. But it turns out to be this little corner of land. It's 5 acres. It's surrounded by trees. It was a field for horses. And so we really wanted to make sure that we minimized any impact on the land as much as we could. We only knocked down one tree in order to satisfy the needs of the utility people so we could get power. But beyond that, we moved several trees to be able to get the driveway through. And that was the space that we then started building a studio around. And that was very much representative of the vision. We want to be able to create a space where people can feel connected and empowered. And for me, walking around through some trees is one of the ways I feel connected and empowered. So the studio design, it reflects that.
Are you living on the property? Is there a house there? Was there a house or did you build the house?
No, we had to build the house. I recognize the privilege that goes along with that, but we built the house because the zoning law said there had to be a house. So we built the house.
Yes.
And when did the property get purchased? I mean, has it been like a 2 or 3 years, or 5 or 10 years? 3.
We bought the property 3 years ago. We built the house 2 years ago. And over this past year is when we've been building the studio.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what were you doing like before that? I mean, were you guys in the same general area, and were you doing recording and working with musicians, or did you have a totally different lifestyle?
A little of both. I've always been involved in music production in some form. I've done a lot of live sound work. I've done some recording work, in addition to our own recordings over the years in various places. But I also had a career outside of, and continue to have a career outside of music as well, where I've been creating technology to make healthcare more efficient. And that's one of the things that's been very important to us. Is this experience is because we believe in music, because we believe in how important music is for our communities. And it's a way for us to give back, in addition to the work that I've done in healthcare, along with a lot of very smart, very capable people. And so we wanted a way to be able to give back with the success that we've achieved there by cultivating an environment for musicians and artists to be able to reach their communities in a deeper way.
Great. So you find this piece of property, you build a house, and then let me go. Let's do a little screen share here, and I'm going to show what looks like a moat at the beginning here.
Yeah, we are in fact building a castle. It's true.
So this picture shows, kind of this like castle-shaped higher ground with a moat around it, but it turns out that's actually the foundation, and that's the center of it. So just obviously you had some rain in Indiana last spring.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yes, this is the land where we have. There's a lot of clay, and so when it rains, it really retains the water. So what you're seeing there is the shape of the foundation, and the footers around the outside, and the rebar sticking up there. That the blessing of being able to build a studio from nothing, as opposed to retrofitting an existing building where it's often in a basement somewhere, or in some industrial place where there's nothing but concrete. We got to be able to maximize the use of space and use of materials to create the best possible space for recording sound. And one of the things that we humans typically do with our buildings is we make them rectangular, and that's the worst possible thing we can do with sound. You end up wasting a lot of space and materials to block off all of those corners. So why not make the building an irregular shape in the first place? And it turns out that that's very conducive to sound.
Well, there is the kind of diamond shaped, or trapezoid shape, I guess is what you might call it. But just, and if I go back to the other one, you can kind of see the foundation is, kind of resembles that shape there. You got the diagonal lines. And but tell us what's going to be inside these. There's a couple different spaces. There looks like a bigger open space at the bottom, and then some smaller rooms up at the top.
Yep. So the shape there is inspired by the golden ratio. If you look in nature, you don't see those rectangles. You see these kind of shapes. Look in the center of a sunflower. It shows up all over the place of a particular ratio, and that ratio has been used here so that when you strike a note on the piano there, or you play a note on a low E on a bass guitar, that it's got the space for it to sound great in the room. So the bottom space, that's where we put the the string quartet, the chamber orchestra, the rock bands, and the top room is the control room, where we sit with all sorts of flashing lights and knobs and switches. And the left and right rooms are the booths where we can put our singers and other delicate folk to make sure they're protected. And then there's a bathroom. I understand that's important. And then the machine room for more equipment, because we need more equipment.
And then all of the windows there at the bottom all look out onto the forest and onto nature, because our experience in going to recording studios was industrial areas, and we we really wanted a place of inspiration. And we find the most inspiration in places of connectivity to grounding, to being grounded.
Yeah, I remember reading on the website how you talked about natural light, and I was thinking about that. And I have been to, I had been to many different radio stations and even TV studios over the years, and none of them have any natural light. You know, so when you mentioned, the minute you said, like, we want to have some windows, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's right. I've never seen I've not been in the recording studios per se for music, but pictures I've seen of them, there's no windows in them, is there?
Right.
Yeah, that's right. And it's admittedly, it's a bit of a contradiction, because the glass is not good for sound. But if you're strategic about it, for example, at the rear of the control room, there are windows. They're small windows, but it lets in natural light in an area that, as you say, traditionally there's absolutely no natural light at all. Right. And then in the tracking room, the large room at the bottom of the diagram there, 3 of the walls are nothing but windows.
Yeah.
Now we have panels that we can put in front of the windows to control the sound in the right circumstances, but you can also put these panels perpendicular to the windows, so that as you're there from the control room looking through, you're seeing trees, you're seeing nature, and you've got that natural light, and that makes a big difference to our being.
Right. We wanted to create a space where the nervous system could be relaxed. The first thing that you experience is relaxation, because, you know, we recognize that a part of the toxicity, for me, anyway, that I recognized was that there's no real groundedness. There's no real depth in terms of when you walk into a space. It's all about what is artificial here versus what is natural here. And I really appreciated Peter Gabriel's recording studio in England, because it's surrounded by nature, because there's water. So that was one of the inspirations for us. And I began praying around the idea of, how do we bring more of this into society here in the United States? So how do we bring this feel into a place in the United States? Yeah, and that's really where we began dreaming from. And Stephen, we were manifesting. We were like, how do we get in alignment here? And Stephen, many years ago, before he started his company, he followed an architect. And when we were asked, you know, after he sold the company, we were asking, how do we invest? How do we invest in community now that we have funding? What can we do to be a part of helping to grow humanity? And so we were like, what if we contacted that architect that you really liked all those years ago and that you've been following? And we were like, oh, it was such an out of the way dream. And then we contacted him, and he said he'd be happy to work with us. And we were like, what? This is like the top architect in terms of people that are designing recording studios. So
his name is Wes
Show.
Yeah, Wes Show.
Yeah, I saw the link on your website, and I looked through clicked through to his website, and my goodness, for at least almost 30 years, he's been doing design work for studios, and he was just a musician who essentially wanted to try to create a better space for him to record in himself. And then next thing you know, he's turned into kind of a world-class designer of it. So you guys, you're like minding your own business in Indiana, thinking, no way is Wes going to even take our phone call, and you reach out. And so he did the actual design of the building. Now, how did he get the feel of the space? Did he have to come and visit it, or did he, tell me about like when you met him and what happened? What was the interaction like? How did he fulfill your dream?
So Wes is a wonderful guy. He's one of the very small group of people in the world that focus their time on designing and building recording studios. It's a very niche industry, and in some ways it's a dying art. We're in a place where so much of music is happening with a laptop and some headphones and some pre-recorded music that's arranged, and I'm in support of the creativity of that, but I think it's important to maintain the recording of a musician with an instrument in a room. Mm-hmm. And that's very much what drove Wes. You know, he's a classically trained pianist, and he wanted his piano to sound better. Mm-hmm. And so he started learning about it, and has ended up dedicating his life to it. And that's how he sees it. He's a student of, he follows the philosophy of Frank Lloyd Wright. And those familiar with his work, as we start releasing more of the photos of the studio, which you can see on Facebook if you search for Silver Birch Entertainment, you can see the website below there, that you'll see snippets of the photos. It's inspired by Frank Lloyd Wright. And so as we chatted with Wes, we actually went to see him. We went to see some of the studios that I was aware of and that I'd seen being built. And these are works of art as they are just as much really well-designed facilities. And so we had a conversation where we said what was important to us. Nature is important to us. Natural light is important to us. A place of inspiration is important to us. And a way to be able to create a space where people feel empowered. And so based on that, based on seeing the land that we'd purchased, he set about putting a design together. And the end result is what we've been building over the last year.
Yeah, that's great. Now, Radiance, you and I have gotten to know each other a little bit, and I didn't know so much about the studio other than that you were building it, but I was familiar with the work you were doing, and that was really in connecting with the heart and the mind and the artistry part of the musician and the recording artist, and really wanting to bring a healthier lifestyle, or at least a different way of looking at it, and maybe giving up the, what's like the traditional way of approaching it, because it really does wear people out and burns people out. And many of the, musicians and artists, they kind of learned this the hard way. And I think your message is to try to introduce that as an alternative way of approaching this. So share your vision in terms of what you're doing, a little bit separate from the actual space and the actual technical part of recording music.
Right. There's 12 areas of a person's life that really show up. And how is it that the recording industry how are we as a recording industry, as a service to humanity and to community? What are we doing in order to help stabilize so that people can move beyond survival mode into thriving mode? So it didn't matter the musicians that I was meeting, everybody that I was meeting. Okay, I won't say everybody. The people that I was meeting didn't have all of the resources and didn't feel like they had community beyond their band that really understood them. And we weren't thinking of the entertainment industry in terms of sustainability. We were thinking in terms of how do we get people through this next phase, and then they're off the charts. They're no longer with us. So I wanted to start looking in terms of how do we help develop safe environments for musicians to be able to come out to start thriving in all areas of their life, so that they weren't on this roller coaster continuously. Now, the downside of that is that a lot of musicians really built an environment where they thrived on this. So their nervous system, it was all built into the drugs, the alcohol, the no sleeping, and this burnout system. And what I'm looking for and what we've created out here is a place of, how do we do this long term? And then how do we bring these resources to the communities that we're traveling through, so that it isn't just about us anymore? How are we really showing up and recognizing that our music is affecting the young people or the audiences? Like you pay $200 or you pay $5 to get in to see your favorite band. And like people are crying. They're like, I love this. This means so much to me. Oh my gosh. And then the musician is gone. but we have an opportunity to create a deep impact and a lasting impact and on an epic scale to help transform the communities that we travel through. Because musicians have this ability to touch the heart and soul of humans across the globe. Music helps to transcend. So how do we start at the ground level for musicians and help to bring in those resources a little bit at a time so that when they're out on tour, they always have a home that they can come back to, get resourced, fill up, and then be in the overflow in order to give back to the community on a really large scale.
Might help if you don't mind to just give some concrete examples.
Yep.
And to do that, a story about the studio we recorded in Culver City in LA in the late 90s. We talked to the engineer that worked there, and this is a small concrete bunker. And when you go outside the door, there's a gas station and there's a subway, and that's about it. Lots of concrete. And he told us a story about what happened when he was there when the LA riots were happening. He was recording 4 guys, and he heard some noises going on out the front door. So he went outside and he put his head out and he saw the rioting that was going on. And with zero emotion in how he's describing the story, he said he went back inside the studio, and there's a control room, there's a tracking room, and nothing else, right? He saw that the band had left out the back door, and so he sat underneath the console and waited for the riots to stop, and then he got up and carried on working. It's an example of the experience that many within the music industry have been conditioned to, that you spend hours upon hours upon hours in this windowless void. There's no sense of time or space, and you laboriously produce something inherently built on emotion. And that's such a contradiction. It's such a dichotomy. And when you go out on the road, I've mentioned about, you have dinner at 2 a.m. and you sleep when people are awake, and then you get up on a stage and you're supposed to be full of life, and it's really challenging. So what would it look like if the creation of that art was in a space where people felt like they were home, but they were in the best possible facility to convey that best possible art? What would it look like if you were held and supported so that you could go further in writing that lyric and singing that lyric that touches people's hearts more deeply? Because we can hear difficult or challenging or emotive statements with our heart through music that we can't hear with our brain. And what would it look like if you were supported as a musician, where you were encouraged and armed with tools so that you could show up in social media between performances, so that we could really elevate a community? So just some examples of what we mean by the kind of things that we're pursuing.
So grateful to be on your show today. Thank you for having us.
Oh, this is great. I love the idea. I love construction, first of all. And so I think it's great. And we're going to show a few more pictures of the some of the materials and things you've been using. But I wanted to just share my own kind of recollection of hearing about recording studios and musicians going into them. And of course, this is more like back in the late 60s into the 70s, when I'm growing up listening to music and becoming aware. And musicians would pay by the hour to go in there, and they had to walk in and be creative right now. And then you're right. It's like this concrete bunker they're going into. And I'm thinking about some videos I've watched. It was from the Beach Boys and Brian Wilson and the Wrecking Crew musicians, and they're all jammed into this studio, and it really was quite fascinating, and I loved it. And it was it was a magical time of recording. but it was like in that kind of an environment where, they were like on the clock. It was like the hour. They had to like make it happen. And of course, how many people had the resources that the Beach Boys did? They hired a wrecking crew, but still they were even on the hour. But these were professionals. So now you have kind of the beginning musician, and they don't have a chance if they go into that kind of an environment. So you are looking to do something very different, and I'm assuming that people are going to be able to come out to your studio and spend. They obviously have a limited time, but it's not like the type of thing like, okay, you got from 2 to 3:30. Go make something happen. How does it work? I mean, how are people going to come, and are they going to stay at a hotel and spend a few days, or what's it all like? How's that work?
We're wanting to build an entire campus here, and the idea with the house was that eventually, once our children are grown, they can rent out the whole facility. We have a space large enough for a tour bus, and we wanted to be able to have a few cabins here as well, so that people can come out and stay. So yeah, we're developing all of that. We needed to do it one piece at a time, first of all, financially, and then second of all, to stay within how the city allows you to build here. So
okay.
All coming together one piece at a time. And the one thing that I've learned is, we've carried this dream for a long time. And I remember being like, is it this year? Is it this year? Is it this year? And just being like ridiculously disappointed at the amount of times that I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I realized that sometimes people just have this long-term dream, and that it actually takes an extensive period of time to hold that dream and to keep it, just open the doors for it so that it can create itself, and becoming way more humble in the process of just recognizing that we've held this vision for an extensive period of time, and that it's growing beyond us now. That we've held it for so long that it isn't about us anymore.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah, it's about like, how do we create a space that is for the people to serve communities on a large scale, so that after we're gone, this is still a place that serves people. So I think that's what I've learned in those early years. I'm like, it's about me. We're going to get this done. We're going to do it the way I want it done. And now we're like, oh, it's just a beautiful space, and we're part of this beautiful creation space for as long as we're here.
Yeah.
It was interesting, Radiance, that you said that your parents had a campground. So you were used to kind of like, this, like you were used to nature. You were used to an environment that you're outdoors a lot. And so I can see that this, has that. And now like the tour bus pulls in, and, the band comes out and hangs out for a few days and does some recording, or hangs out for a few weeks, depending on what their needs are. So this is a wonderful vision, and I think it's great. Let's look at a couple more pictures. So what I'm looking at is something called Resilient Channel. This is up in the ceiling, the rafters, and there's insulation in there. I'm assuming these resilient channels will keep like the boards from moving around and creaking, or what's the purpose of that? I never saw that before.
So those joists you see up there, they're actually 2x12s. So that's the amount of insulation sprayed in there. And then the clips that you see that attach the resilient channel to the joists are actually rubber. And that means that resilient channel is acoustically isolated from the joists. And so the drywall gets attached only to the channel.
Oh.
And as a result, when vibration occurs, as will always occur when there's music with a sound, the vibration is absorbed by the rubber, and it doesn't transfer through to the walls, to the framing, through the roof, and through the walls. So that helps us create an environment where, the guy with a lawnmower isn't showing up on the recording, and that when we're recording that particularly loud drum part at 2 a.m., that we don't get phone calls from, people in the neighborhood. So it helps us control the sound.
Awesome. And we'll just run through a couple more ideas. And transformers, there must be going to be more than one transformer in this building.
There are lots of them. Yes, that's true. This is just, I put some pictures up and a blog article talking about the things that you do to reduce the noise floor in a recording. Because the more you record those tracks with more noise, it shows up. So the transformer makes a difference. The type of electrical cable with the isolated ground makes a difference. The insulation inside the ductwork to control the volume of when the heating is on, the glue between the drywall, and endless amounts of particular audio and network cabling that's got the right shielding. There's a tremendous amount that's gone into the construction of the studio outside of just the shape of the walls. And all of this contributes to the nature of the sound that's what we're after.
And then Radiance, I know that people want to take a little break and take a walk out, and that you've designed a few miles, maybe not a few miles, at least a nice little walking trail that people can go take a walk.
Yes, and then I'm also designing nature art gallery. So when people are releasing their music, they can come out and do these courses where their community can listen to the music and then paint according to the emotions that are coming up for them. And then that art gallery, on their opening day of releasing their music, they can do art galleries out in the forest so that people can have more of a totality experience instead of just an auditory experience.
So this path we're looking at here is about 50 feet outside the back of the studio. So as you look through the windows in the tracking room, this is what you see. And you can walk out the back door and take a wander through the woods here, and this sort of path winds on around to the right and to the left.
Yeah, that's wonderful. When I was when I spent my 10 years in Montana after the Forrest Gump days, and I was doing a lot of writing and creating. I wasn't a musician, but I was an artist in terms of creation. And I had the mountains of Montana, and I frequently would walk outside and look at them, and it's just, there's something about nature and connecting with nature, whether it's trees in a path or mountains, that just, it's good for the creative soul.
The original, I just want to check, how much time do you have left here before I go into another?
We have 8 minutes.
When we were first thinking about dreaming this, we found the spot that we wanted was Avalanche Ranch in Montana.
Oh.
And that was like where we wanted to create this. And then it turned out that it was Indiana and this forest. And so I understand like those mountain ranges of Montana, the beauty of that, and really the expansiveness. So we kind of got that into a concrete little, not quite 100,000 acres. It was more like 5, but we're really grateful for, starting right here humbly and expanding.
And you're right smack in the middle of the country. So people, musicians from all over can, and people travel. So it's an easy location to get to. So I think it's great.
15 minutes from the airport, one road, 15 minutes.
Great. There's Stephen, just tell us this. What are we looking at with this last pile of lumber here, and why is this important?
So this is it's actually red oak there, and just to the right is cypress or cypress, depending on which part of the world you're from. And it's just showing the amount of precision that has gone into a design that is designed to emphasize the nature, the use of natural woods, and the building that is sitting in here surrounded by trees, but also the labor that has gone into it, with all of these individual pieces putting together, that creates a piece of art in and of itself. I wanted to mention that I've never been a rock star or a musician that way, although I played in the high school marching band. Maybe that's why I like that, the John Philip Sousa music. It still resonates with me. But the Forrest Gump experience was a bit like that, in the sense that I would walk out into a crowd of people, and people got all excited and wanted to have their picture made and sit on the bench and interact. And so when you were talking about the yin and yang and that, pulling lifestyle, I understood that perfectly. And I had to
I had to learn how to take care of myself. And I didn't do it really, really well at the beginning. I got better at it. And I ultimately never really got completely good at it until after I kind of finished that and realized that some of that big adrenaline rush was good in a way, but it was also unhealthy long term. And so anyway, I just wanted to share that I can relate to what you're talking about that way. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention is that the American Gumption tour will be starting, and I will be traveling around, and I want to bring my tour bus right there and visit you guys.
Yes.
We'd love to see you.
And I was also saying, please come out with your tools, because we also want to build an Ewok village, a tree house back there. So we're ready for you as soon as you're able to be here.
Well, we will eventually get there. I think it's great what you're doing. When are you going to actually be, like, do you have sort of a targeted date? I mean, no pressure, but when can the musicians start booking space and showing up?
In the new year.
In the new year. Good. So it's really coming up. It's just a couple months away.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, you'll have to, I would love to have you come back onto the show when you have photos of it completed and with the grand opening party, some pictures. So we'll bring you back in the new year, and we'll share the journey will continue. How does that sound?
Sounds wonderful.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Good. So we just have a minute or two left. What would you like people to? I mean, your websites there are Lighthouse Effects and also Silver Birch Entertainment. I mean, why would if someone's interested, what should they do?
So if you go to silverbirchentertainment.com, you can read about in more detail and see what we're doing, stay up to date. You can communicate with us from there. If you are a musician, if you are a songwriter, if you're a performer, if you're a producer, and you're looking for a creative team to work with you to reach your audience in new ways, we want to hear from you. Whether there's 3 people in your audience or whether there's 3,000 or 300,000, when you step onto the stage and you say something, or you play a note, or you sing something, you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to reach people, to touch people's hearts. And we believe fundamentally that our community needs more of that right now.
Excellent.
That's what we want to accomplish.
Yeah, you have the ability to help heal yourself and to help create spaces and resources so that people can heal themselves. And for me, for Lighthouse Effects, I'm beginning to teach courses online so that musicians and their audiences can know themselves emotionally, what they're feeling, what their needs are, how to help create healthy boundaries. So it's the beginning of many courses and seminars yet to come.
Good. And full disclosure, Radiance and I both have shows here on Spirituality Gone Wild, and that's how we met a few months ago. And it was just one of those things that we meet and we connected, and in a way, what Spirituality Gone Wild is all about is creating that kind of education and stimulation for people who want to take control of their lives in a way where you're focusing on the musical part specifically with your recording studio and your business, but Spirituality Gone Wild in a way is like for all artists, whether they're musicians or just whether they're people working what we call traditional jobs, because there's an awareness and a consciousness raising level where the old way of getting your kicks from what we were told was a fun lifestyle. Turns out it's not as much fun as it was supposed to be.
Well, it was fun for like 15 minutes, and then you have to do something with that energy. So yes, and really, we just welcome people to come out, drop out, say hello, and we're resources wherever we have and whatever we have to share in terms of resources. That's where we offer from. So however we can help with you building your community to strengthen your community, that's where we're coming from.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I would love to have you come back when the studio's opened up and you have some pictures and you can show, what the finished thing. But thank you for letting, us take a sneak peek at this point, to see what was going on, because it was fascinating to me. I wanted to see it, and I realize it's, there's a big veil over it right now. My goodness, it's got to be a big veil that's covering the whole thing. And pretty soon they're going to pull it off, and then the musicians are going to run in, and life is going to be wonderful. So anyway, congratulations. And thank you for sticking with a dream that is like longer than, a month or a couple of months. I mean, this is like something that started over 20 years ago, and here it comes. So this is wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, we'll see you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve.
All righty. Well, that was Radiance and Steve Tyler. What a great story. Reinventing the way music is created and the lifestyle of musicians. So I think that's great. All righty. So now tomorrow, no guest at this point. Probably going to do just a monologue show, but maybe I'll fill in a guest. We'll see how that works out. On Wednesday, Tamara Fleming, Meaning of Space, and we'll be talking about your virtual background. What is that? What is behind you when you're on your Zoom meeting, and what is that? What message are you sending as a result of that? On Thursday, Reverend Wynn Henderson, MD, Spiritual Cure for Addiction. And on Friday, Brian Gregory comes back with the Admanity Protocol, and we're going to go do a deep dive. We're going to talk about what you really get when you get the his full report. Alrighty, so and that was a follow up on what started last Friday. Alrighty, everybody, have a great day. We will see you tomorrow.